What's going on? And we are back with Bleav in the Cowboys on the Bleav network. I know the faces look a little different. This isn't Jeff. This is still Jess, but that's not Jeff. I got RJ Ochoa sitting in with us, manager over at Blogging with the Boys, and we are going to talk everything Cowboys, update you on things that are going on in training camp, my conversation that I have with Mike Zimmer, also some trades, some signings, some injuries, a lot of things happen in that camp. But, without any further ado, RJ, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm not Jeff. He's great. He's much better at this than I am. But it's kind of you to have me here. Great to be with you, Jesse. I don't think I've ever had a chance to work with you, but I've definitely worked around you and with a lot of people who worked with you. So it's exciting to be in your orbit. It's exciting to be in the middle of August and closer to football. But it is not shocking that we're still sitting here with the things that everybody wants to have happen for a few months now. We're truly stuck in purgatory in a lot of senses.
Yeah, you know what? So let's cut right to the chase. We've hearkened on this all off season. Jerry Jones and the Jones family, right? The phrase "all in." We heard that in after the Green Bay loss, it was like the phrase that we it was like the Batman sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when Gotham is going to hell. It's like when you see the when you see the Batman sign, it gives you a little bit of hope that things are getting ready to turn around, right? And it's like you have the Green Bay loss, and then you hear we're going all in. And so now people go from heartache to hopeful. And then a day, a week, a month, the draft, free agency opens up, things don't happen, and it goes from that sign of the Batman sign of everything's going to be okay, the all in, to now people are like, the hell with this team. And then we get the training camp, and inevitably, I always use the term hopium, right? I said Jerry Jones is the Pablo Escobar of the hopium dealer. Like, no one deals hopium better than Jerry Jones. And you start seeing the fan base turn around a little bit as we got into training camp. Still have the CeeDee Lamb not signed yet. Still Dak Prescott not having his deal done yet. But now it feels like the Cowboys have entered, I guess, the free agency in training camp type mode now. The addition of Jordan Phillips and the addition of Carl Lawson. What is your take on that? What is the energy that you're hearing from hearing from people? And how do you think this fits into what Mike Zimmer wants to do on that defensive side?
Yeah, well, obviously the tenor of things was really low. I think a lot of people agree this is probably the lowest that the fan base has been entering training camp in some time. I feel like we say that all the time, but for what it's worth, it did feel like the case, and it still does in some senses. But the Jordan Phillips trade, it felt like you mentioned hopium. We just needed like one hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we got it. You know what I mean? In the Jordan Phillips deal, and the fact that it was this great trade, and it got even better on Thursday when it was reported that the pick that Dallas is sending is conditional upon him being on the roster for 2 games. So it is just this A+ sort of thing. And you wonder, okay, well, if you can do this, like, there are no rules prohibiting you from doing this in March. You could have been doing this for 6 months now. And then you add the Carl Lawson signing on top of it. And I will say the kind of, what goes up must come down nature to all this is that these things are happening because of injuries, right? Like, no disrespect to Carl Lawson, but I think everybody wishes that Sam Williams hadn't torn his ACL and reality hadn't forced this. And so in that respect, while I will certainly sit here and pat the Joneses on the back for doing the bare minimum, they wouldn't have even done this had it not been for their hand being forced to some degree, what with different injuries that we've seen now along the offensive line as well. So I give them credit, certainly. I think that they've done the right things. I think that Jordan Phillips and Carl Lawson are low risk, high reward type of moves that can really work out. I know people are a little bit, sensitive to the idea that the Jordan Phillips trade suggests that maybe they're lower on Mazi Smith, but you can't, even if they are low on Mazi, you can't just sit here and be like, well, we took him in the first round last year, so that has to work. Like that would be a terrible plan. So they're operating like a proper and legitimate franchise for the first time since that Green Bay loss. And so in that respect, I guess if you dust everything from the past 6 months under the rug, they're a normal NFL team.
Yeah, that's tough to do. I mean, if you dust all of that, the mountain hill of that rug, they would look, it's like the elephant in the corner room. But you hit on something. You talked about the trade and the signing of Carl Lawson and Jordan Phillips. does that send shade towards the Mazi Smith conversation? And that is a conversation, if we're being honest, that everyone is having, right? We saw the lackluster year that he had last year, and there were high hopes for Mazi Smith, and he didn't live up to it. Let's be honest. Like, he didn't live up to the things that we thought. And yes, the injury to Sam Williams has caused a trickle effect, right? You got to start doing some more things. But the question still remains, RJ, like, what is Mazi? And I get it. As someone who's been on the other side in the locker room, sometimes the coaches, there's a couple ways coaches coach, right? You have you have what happens behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know, when you might get dog cussed, right? You might get like rolled like a Brahma bull. And then there's the on the field stuff that sometimes coaches, but then there's that media coaching. And I think, and maybe it's a skepticism in me, but when you start hearing how, Mazi's doing good, and you start hearing it like almost forced at times, right? Like, sometimes it just pops up out of nowhere. You're like, nobody really asked for that, but it's like they're saying it because they want him to hear positive reinforcements coming from his coaches so that can continue to build his confidence. So, would I be wrong? Would others be wrong to have that conversation of saying, bringing in Jordan Phillips, bringing in Lawson is a little bit of an insurance policy that if Mazi doesn't take the next step, we at least have some fillers in that position where if all things go wrong, we can have a rotation of guys so that we just don't get bludgeoned up the middle like we've done the last umpteen years, it feels like.
I mean, I don't know how your mind can't go there. And I think it's okay for it to go there. I mean, Mazi's a big boy. I'm sure he can handle, people talking about him. But it's only been a year, but it does feel like Mazi has kind of worn out his welcome with fans a little bit quicker than a lot of other players who have fallen short of expectations. In fact, Bruce Feldman does incredible work for The Athletic. And obviously Mazi was like number one on the freaks list or whatever a couple of years back. I saw that Bruce had that list come out this year, and I kind of was just like, I don't even care about this list. Like this list means nothing to me. Mazi has kind of soured my taste on that. And I think a lot of people feel that way about him. Again, all due respect to him. But that being said, good for them establishing an insurance plan. And I think that you can discern that on some level. I mean, the fact that they cut Carl Davis certainly suggests that they're still willing to believe in Mazi to some degree. Obviously, Osa Odighizuwa is still around, but they should have insurance. I mean, that's been, I think, the widespread criticism is that they're not, planning for a rainy day. They're just waiting for it to start raining and adjusting, which is what they've done here with obviously these moves. And again, kudos there for once again doing the bare minimum, but it is a battle of attrition this NFL season. And they let their insurance policy walk into Seattle and Jonathan Hankins. And maybe he really was obsessed with Aiden Dirty and he wanted to follow him or whatever the case may be. But you simply cannot you cannot sunk cost fallacy this and say, well, Mazi was a first round draft pick last year. I feel like, all due respect to Jason Garrett, I mean, the Chaz Green game in Atlanta is like the ultimate example of just believing like, okay, well, it's his turn. He's got to step up. He's got to make it happen. And it just doesn't happen sometimes. So you have to be able to supplement or hedge your bet. And this doesn't quite feel like this, but it definitely feels like it's in that neighborhood. And again, that's a smart thing.
Yeah. And I had an opportunity. I was in training camp last week. And one of the blessings that I have as a former player is I get to go places that other media members just can't go. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm having breakfast and this is a breakfast conversation that I get a chance to have with Mike Zim. And it was about, I mean, we didn't even sit, we were standing. It's probably about 3 to 5 minutes.
What were you eating standing? Because that's important to understand.
So you know what? So the nostalgia in me was I went back to what my pregame meal was when I was a player.
Wow, you were like fully in the mood. Respect.
I'm fully immersed into this thing now, right? I'm back inside. I'm back in. Right. The place. There's always an omelet station. There's always a fresh omelet station. So I go to the omelet station and I get an omelet, 2 eggs, 2 real eggs. They'll give you the I don't like
the packaged ones, the little plastic ones. Yeah, for sure.
No. Crack me 2 eggs. I need the fresh eggs. I need 2 of those. I need tomatoes. I need a little bit of ham, a little bit of bacon, scramble it well, a lot of cheese, and then they'll have a little sauce on there. So I'll get that, and then I always get a half a waffle. I don't want the full waffle. I just want a half a waffle.
Yeah, proportions matter for sure.
Yeah. So, but Zim's he's a buffet guy. So we're standing over by the buffet while I'm waiting for my scrambled eggs to get done.
Okay. The context of the scene is necessary. Now I can kind of put myself there. I'm with you. Right.
So we're standing there. He's like fiddling around with the pork sausages and stuff like that. Doesn't know if he want one or two. You know what I'm saying? He has a cup of fruit and a coffee. So we're just having a brief conversation. And the thing that I asked him first, I said, Coach, if you had to give me one word to describe what this defense will be this year, being that you don't have much time, right? And he said, unpredictable. And we kind of stood there a little bit and we looked at each other, and he said, I want to put players in positions for them to maximize their skill set and have success. But I want it to be to the point where the opposing offenses has no idea where we're coming from. And I said, okay. And go ahead.
No, I mean, I want to hear the whole thing before I judge it.
So he says, I want to put guys in positions that they maximize their success. And he doesn't want opposing offenses to know what's coming, and that's what he's building. He said, I'm building up to that. I'm getting guys in the right places where they're going to be successful. I'm not trying to play guys out of position. I'm not trying to play guys for playing sake. I want if I have a guy who's really good on first down, then guess what? He's going to play first downs, right? And he's going to be off the field on third downs. And he wants it to be a point where the opposing offenses doesn't know where his pressures are coming from, doesn't know where guys are going to be lined up from any given down, but he wants those guys that will play to be in a position to be at 100% at what they do, right? So whatever, if it's power, if it's speed, if that guy is simply a power guy, and it reminded me of my time in New England, because that's how Bill Belichick functions. And Bill Belichick functions in a way of, if this guy is good at digging holes, I'm not going to have him plant seeds. I'm going to have him dig holes, right? And that's it. That is it. Your job is to dig holes. I'm not asking you to do anything else, but damn it, you better be really good and consistent at digging holes. I'll find another guy to plant the seed. I'll find another guy to water that seed when it's planted. I'll find another guy to make sure that the plant is up and running when we need it up and running. That's the way that Bill Belichick operates. He's not asking you to do 100 different things. He's asking you to do one thing consistently really, really, really well. And I think that's what Zim is trying to get to, because he sees the writing on the wall kind of I got 1 year to get this right. That's it. I don't have this. I don't have a 4-year deal where I get a chance to plant seeds and watch them grow and nurture them and water them and allow this thing to matriculate into something greater. I got one shot at this. And then if I get it right and we win, maybe I get another DC job or head coaching job somewhere else or whatever it is. It's like Zim understands in our conversation that he is on his preseason. He is the Jesse Holley of preseason game number 4. Well, while he has the credentials to go and get other jobs, he realizes this is my audition too. And I got to get it right.
So I'll hands cards on the table. I was not thrilled with the Zim hire. It felt really lazy, just because the other candidates who they interviewed took seriously were Ron Rivera and Rex Ryan, right? So again, if those are your 3 guys, it doesn't feel like you're doing an extensive amount of homework. But that being said, everything so far, including your interaction, obviously kind of passes the smell test with flying colors. So I'm buying in. I'm fine if I'm late to this party. You know what I mean? You've already had 2 omelets, you know what I mean? When I'm walking in the door or whatever. I think it's interesting kind of compartmentalizing all this together. But everyone so far that's done any kind of radio or television or whatever interview, on the team has mentioned discipline. Everybody takes that and runs with it and kind of implies or insinuates that Dan Quinn operated with a sense without discipline or whatever the case may be. But I would offer that the quote that I was most interested in was Marquise Bell after the preseason game when he was asked about this. And obviously he had the interception that day. And I've never really heard, and you can correct me or you can tell me if you've heard this kind of quote before, but he said it's going to work. It was almost like he was trying to convince people, Marquise Bell, when he was talking about, this scheme and what Zimmer's offering. And I just thought it was kind of interesting that he was almost trying to sell people. But thinking more about it and contextualizing it, you talking about, dudes who dig holes. Marquise Bell was probably the dude playing the most out of his natural position last year under Dan Quinn. And again, not to, take shots at Dan Quinn, but Marquise Bell's probably like, hey man, like, I'm a hole digger. And last year I was, planting seeds. I was some days I was watering the seeds, whatever the case may be. So it does kind of, make sense in that respect. I'm very interested because in a similar sense, we've seen Micah playing a little bit off the ball, and maybe that is, something he's more suited to. Like, I know we talked about that a lot his rookie season, and we let it kind of go because he's such a dominant pass rusher, but Zimmer has bought some benefit of the doubt in my mind. Not that I'm anybody important in that respect, but I'm starting to buy in a little bit. I'm starting to trust this process. And you're right. I mean, it is interesting if he truly does feel like this. I'm this year's Jesse Holley, whatever. It's time to go, because he is somewhat beholden to the franchise given his history and everything like that. But he doesn't know Mike McCarthy anything. Like, if this doesn't work, is Zimmer going to lose a lot of sleep because it didn't work out for this staff that he was the last man arriving to? So it's interesting. I find him to be maybe the most interesting person in the building because of how he arrived and his history and everything going on here.
Yeah, and the thing about that as well is from I think from Zimmer perspective is we all agree that Micah is a generational talent, right? Like you don't get many opportunities to have that at your fingertips, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like those guys don't come around often. You can bounce around from team to team to team, and you don't get a Micah, you don't get a Miles, you don't get like you know what I'm saying, to have that opportunity to work with those type of players. I think Zim, looks at that and goes, this can be great for me. Mm-hmm. I can use this and this player as a springboard, because Micah is going to be the centerpiece of the success of what they do defensively, right? It's like however it's deployed, however he's deployed, he's going to be the reason why this defense either is thriving or not. You know what I mean? Like, his pressure and his ability to wreak havoc will be the fundamental reason why this defense is where they're at the end of the year. It's just what it is. It's like it or not. That's just what it is. And I also had another conversation. This was the next day at breakfast.
Again? You going back to back, or?
I'm back to back. I'm consistent.
That's heavy protein, dude.
Yeah, I am. What do they say? I'm superstitious when it comes to stuff like that. So back to back, same thing. Half a cup of orange juice. Like, it's always the same thing. Like, football players are just like this. They get this superstitious ways. But I had a conversation, another breakfast conversation at the Waffle Iron with your assistant head coach and your DB's coach, Al Harris.
Okay.
And that was my first time actually having like a one-on-one moment with him. And I opened up with something that he and I both shared in common. Like, my rookie year, I was in Cincinnati, and Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, was my OG at that time. And the one DB that Chad raved about and gave the utmost respect to was Al Harris. And he would tell you all the time, he was, man, listen, if Al Harris is pressing you and he gets his hands on you, it's a wrap. And he was like, it's a wrap. And so I shared that with Al, and he's like, man, Chad's my dude, good dude. So we laughed and joked about that. And I asked him, and this goes to another point that I have with a lot of people asking, why haven't the Cowboys went out and re-signed Stephon Gilmore? Mm-hmm. And I asked Al, because I'm a fan of Carson. I like a guy who has reps, a guy who plays the position, 4-year starter at a Power 5 conference. That to me translates. Sure. Just the knowledge and the comfortability of playing the position, that translates. And Al looked at me and he said, I got another one. That's what he said. He said, I said, that's my pet cat. I said, I'm an offensive guy, but this is a guy that I'm rooting for. I said, he went to Wake. I'm a Carolina guy, but I like this kid. I'm rooting for him. And he looked at me and he said, I got another one. And he said, this kid never stops wanting to learn. He's like, I've dealt with some guys and I've trained some guys and I've been around some guys that they'll come for you to get the information until they kind of get to that point of playing and they don't want to learn anymore. And he's like, this kid is relentless in his learning. And he said he has all of the tools. And he just looked at me and he said, I got another one. Meaning, I got Diggs. I got
Deron Bland.
Not Deron Bland. He's like, I got another one. So if people are looking around and asking why aren't the Cowboys going to sign an insurance policy and Stephon Gilmore and what he did last year, I understand and I get it. It's because, and I also understand now why people rave about Al Harris. Like just being in his presence, like I'm very big on leadership. I'm very big on leader of men and who I would follow. As someone who is, I consider myself an alpha, and I'm just not for following anybody. Spending 5 minutes alone with Al Harris, I see why Dan Quinn wanted him. I see why other people wanted him to come. Al Harris is a leader of men, and I would follow him. And I don't even play defense.
So thinking about Al Harris and his path, my dad went to Texas A&I back in the day, before it was Texas A&M Kingsville. And obviously Al is a Javelina in and of that sense. So I've always loved Al, and it was difficult to, do that when he was in Green Bay, obviously. But I think that we have gotten drunk off of like the Chris Richards of the world that are out there, even Dan Quinn to a degree, right? Like you strap on the cleats and you run, and remember the highlights of Chris Richard, like yelling and screaming on the sidelines at players. Like that's, Twitter loves that kind of stuff, and right. Not to take any shots at him, but I mean, all Al Harris does is succeed. Like his track record here is insane. Yeah. Since 2021, Trayvon Diggs leads the NFL in interceptions, and he didn't even play last year. Obviously played, those 2 games. Deron Bland is tied for second in that respect, and he wasn't even in the NFL in 2021. And so, yeah, if Al Harris says, I've got another one, I totally trust that. And it makes sense that Jordan Lewis has hung on throughout this regime and throughout obviously all the changes that have happened defensively and along the staff, because he's that dude, right? Like if anyone has been, my thing this year has been equating him to somebody, obviously in Orlando Scandrick. Like Orlando just hung on forever because, in terms of like being an elder statesman surviving. And that's who that quality is so
Orlando's a horrible person to me. So, but yeah.
But you get my
I get what you're saying.
Right. And that's who Jordan is, but he's that guy who's like always learning, always grinding, always hustling, always whatevering. And he fits that mold, even though he predates obviously Al and all these other players and really almost everybody on the team just about. And so yeah, the Kalen Carson thing is amazing. And if they pull this off, if they pull off another 5th round pick like this, it's truly insane. But it also begs the question, like, well, what happened to Eric Scott Jr.? Like, like that, what was that just a miss? Like y'all traded up to get him, like you were that in love. And obviously they've already punted on Nashawn Wright, but Al Harris is probably, the fact that he came back was one of the most significant things over the course of the offseason, and that he is around for having this entire group together is one of the more important things going on with the team right now.
Yeah, Al Harris is good. He's a good person to have in the foxhole with you, and that's why people and players just gravitate towards him. And I picked that up in 5 minutes being in his presence. Like he is that guy that he is knowledgeable. He's because there's a difference between, especially from former players, because you can have information, you can have knowledge, you can have all of those things, but you can't teach it. Right. And that's a big thing. It's like, yeah, I know how to play DB, but I can't show and teach someone else how to do it. I can't show and teach them. It's why Michael Jordan made a horrible coach and a horrible GM, because Mike's like, jump high. He's like, yeah, Mike, yeah, I don't fly. Right. Yeah. Like, just shoot it in there. Like that doesn't work for me. Like I need more than just that, Right. So sometimes you have really good players or great players or, talented players that don't translate into great coaches. And Al has that. He has the credentials of being a great player, a winning player, someone who played a really long time in this league, but he understands how to translate that into the verbiage of coaching and getting players to understand that. We'll end with this. We'll go to the offense. A lot of times, the offensive side. CeeDee Lamb's contract still not done. Don't know when it'll be done. Deadlines makes dates, deadlines makes deals, and we're getting close to the season. We're on the precipice of preseason game number 2. And the thing about football is a 100% hurt business.
Right.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And some of them are more significant than others, but it's coming, right? It's happening. It's going to happen. And you don't want it to happen. You don't wish it to happen. It's one of those things where it's just the price of doing business.
Right.
And lurking at every turn is the grim reaper of hurt. You know what I mean? And if you don't have that depth, if you don't have those pieces in place, that the next man up type deal, you find yourself really, really in a bad place. And while CeeDee Lamb is away and he's training, he's in Houston in training, you know, you've heard, you've seen the clips of Brandon Cooks having a fantastic camp, gets hurt today. Right. And now you go from being, you know, everything's good to the gif of the guy with the house on fire, and it was like everything's fine because you don't have CD and Brandon Cooks is hurt, and from all reports, it's not anything that is season ending or long term. But you know, hell, we thought JJ McCarthy was going in because he had a sore knee. Comes out, he has a whole new meniscus tear. You know, right. So does this put a little bit of pressure on the Cowboys now to go? If we started football tomorrow, Jalen Tolbert's our wide receiver 1.
I mean, I have like 14 problems with this. I mean, you know, in the sense of like, have you seen It's a Wonderful Life, the Christmas movie?
Yes.
I only saw that for the first time like 2 years ago. So, I mean, you know, I assume everybody lives in the world that I do. But that being the case, Thursday was kind of that for the Cowboys, right? Like they kind of got to look at life, you know, without Brandon Cooks and see how horrible it would be for that like 20 minutes or whatever it was. And thankfully he was all right. But to your point, you know, is that the beginning, right? Like, is that the first blow from the Grim Reaper of hurt, you know, and he's just winding up. They, you know, first round is over and it's a 10-round thing that you got to go the distance on. So, okay. I mean, urgency is obviously the buzzword around here ever since last week and the LOL, whatever. If you don't feel a sense of urgency, if you don't feel a sense of panic or a sense of stress or whatever, you have bottled this beyond comprehension. I mean, that's already the case. You know what I mean? But so it shouldn't have taken the Brandon Cooks thing to wake anybody up, I guess is my point. Like if it took that for someone to go, wow, we really got to get CeeDee here, then we're even worse off than we could have possibly imagined. And the additional problem I have with all of it is I had an issue coming into this camp with, not with Jalen Tolbert. I mean, I think he's a wonderful person, but with the idea of like, oh, well, he's just going to be wide receiver 3 because we want it to be. Like there was nothing proven there, and thankfully he's obviously had a great camp, you know, so he's living up to the belief that they place on him. Good for him. But what if we just hypothesize, what if CeeDee does miss time and Brandon Cooks is injured? Now all of a sudden, like his rookie season, you're making Jalen Tolbert play with a higher level of expectation that is completely unfair to him. Now you're damaging him as a player the way you did as a rookie, and you undid all that damage across the course of his second season. Like there are just so many threads that are being pulled and unraveled here. And so not getting this done is just, I mean, it's insane at this point in time. And for what it's worth, Thursday was the 15th. It was August 14th last year when the Zach Martin restructure got done. So we're now further down the rabbit hole than things got with Zach. We're not quite to the point that they got with Zeke. That was early September 5 years ago. But this is now a bigger deal and a worse off situation than Zach Martin was. And so I have, if this isn't the time to get up and do it, I mean, like, when is it? Like, how much more can the house be on fire to convince you to call 911?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And we wait. That's all we can do. We wait with bated breath and hoping that we wake up the next morning and we see breaking news. The Cowboys come to terms with Dak and CeeDee, right? Like, but for sure to get CeeDee signed and bring him into camp, because there is a level of, while I do Bleav that CeeDee is doing everything in his working power to be in shape, to be right, as someone who has tried it out there before, you're not in football shape if you're not playing football. You just aren't. You just are not. And then when you go from there's a reason why they have these ramp up periods. Because if you go from not doing anything and then the season gets here and you have to go literally from 0 to 100, there's a hamstring, there's a quad, there's a groin, there's something that inevitably the Grim Reaper of Hurts creep around the corner and go, well, you can't take all this time off and just think you're going to come back and do things this way at that position. Because when CeeDee comes in, there is no pitch count, right? When you get to Cleveland, there's no pitch count.
Right.
There's no pitch count when you're playing Cleveland. It's not. It's we need you on the field. If that means 50, 60, 70 plays, you have to be out there. And so that lingers in the back of my mind too. So I hope they get this deal done yesterday. I do. I really do. All right, man. That's it for us. Thank you, RJ, for blessing us with your presence. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to work with you for this first time. We worked around each other in a lot of different spaces, but you can find RJ over on Blogging with the Boys and doing his great work with those people over there. And hopefully he'll come back and do this again with Bleav the Cowboys with me. Do you have any like go away taglines that you use in any of your shows or anything that you do?
I don't, but I know we've gone a little long, but I've never had the chance to tell you, Jesse Holley, this, and I was very excited to do it tonight.
Oh, let's do it.
So I obviously have been a Cowboys fan my whole life, and am extremely fortunate and blessed to have the profession and the job that I do. So my dad and I used to go to Cowboys training camp when I was a lot younger, obviously, back before I was, kind of permanently in Oxnard. And we loved 4th and Long. It was such a trip for us in 2009. Like, it was such an awesome experience watching it on television. And, again, it was those days that kind of birthed, what became my career. And we went to training camp in 2009 in the Alamo Dome. Mm-hmm. And it was super awesome and whatever. And you were signing autographs up along and for anyone who didn't or doesn't remember, getting autographs is weird because you were like in the front row of the stadium. Right. It wasn't like a crowd on the ground or anything like that. And I was so desperate to get your autograph because we had loved the show and he and I had watched it together and it was all this fun or whatever. And I saw this kid jump over the railing and it was like 8 feet off the ground, the front row or whatever. And it was successful for him. I don't know whose autograph he got, but I was just like, well, I have to go jump off the railing now. So I jumped off the railing and evaded security, and I got your autograph on a helmet that's here and all my, kind of stuff here. And then I just blended in with the like important people and was escorted out through this like VIP exit. And somebody said that Sam Hurd was probably not going to make the roster that year in the conversation that was taking place around me when we were walking out of the Alamo Dome. So that was a cool story. I risked getting maybe arrested in your name, Jesse Holley. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for risking arrest for the I don't know, the autograph of me.
It was worth it. It was worth it, and it made for a great story. That was 15 years ago.
But now my question is, did you root for me on the show? Did you say I want? And it's okay if you didn't.
So I did root for you in full sincerity. I loved the way Hawk played. Like, he was just so fun to watch. So I wanted you to win, but I enjoyed him as a player. And that's why when he latched on with Cincinnati, which maybe now knowing this, that you're a Chad guy, you must have like hated him for that. So that must have been, just like super annoying for you. I hated Montrell on the show, like absolutely hated him. So it was just, it was so great. It was such a, looking back on it and what like, reality television has become, but let alone what the Cowboys have become, it was this cool thing. The love of the Cowboys that I share with my dad still kind of fuels what I do today. And so it was this different thing that, we kind of got to experience together and talk about. And then, you have had the career that you've had. So that's always been fun to kind of watch and work around, like I said. But I definitely rooted for you and also enjoyed Hawk having the success that he did. His just feet were so much fun to watch as a football fan.
Hawk's an amazing dude. Like, I still root for Hawk and everything that he does. Amazing dude. Still talk to him. He's the one guy that I appreciate from that show. I too did not like Montrell, but I could not stand Moses Washington.
Dude, he sucked too. Like, I mean, it was so great when you obviously succeeded. Yeah. It was such a cool concept. I don't think something like that, I'm sure you've probably talked about this a million times, but something like that could never happen again. But that Jesse Holley and Andrew Hawkins made it. And I wish Montrell and Moses all the best in life. But that it was you two and not them two was what I wanted. That was my preferred outcome.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, man. That definitely made my night. But we got to get you some sort of outro. You got to find something that kind of gives you the RJ Ochoa like outro. Think about it. Think about it. So the next time that you join me, that we'll have an outro for you. You can say something like, whatever it is. You can say, whatever. Figure out something that is your brand.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Des caught it, something like that. Yeah,
yeah. But that's something like that. That's fine. You can say that's it right there. You can say
Sure.
Des caught it because, like I always say, all right, man, that's it for us. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, RJ. Thank you for everyone listening. We'll continue to put out great content on Bleav in the Cowboys. Subscribe. You can see us all wherever you find podcasts at Apple, Spotify. Go and find it and listen to us. And we'll be back, man. All right. Thanks, RJ. And my outro is always eliminate the contingency.